are mammoth. Let me give you guys an idea. Does anyone know how many people applied to UCLA last year? Take a guess.
70,000.
90,000, 91,000 exact. 78 direct applicants for freshman admission, and 72 and 19 transfer. 91,000 people applied to that school. In any place in this world, that is a city. With a government, a mayor, the whole bit, right? This is what we're facing. So you have to understand the equation. It's not the caliber of student. There are amazing students who do not get into Harvard. There are amazing students who do not get into Berkeley. There are amazing students who do not get into any of these top schools, and it may have nothing to do with how amazing they are. It's the fact that there are so many other amazings, there's just so many spaces, right? Okay. I'm going to scare you a little bit more, then I'm going to make it a little bit better, okay? I promise. All right. So there's a lot of talk out there about what's known as the Asian premium, and I bring this up because obviously this crowd, it matters. Right? Now, there was some great research done in the late 90s. A couple of researchers from University of Pennsylvania got a hold of some data sets about admission statistics. And they were able to show, I should say, they were able to demonstrate that Asian applicants to the top tier private Ivy schools consistently had to score 180 points or higher better than their peers of different races in order to be considered the same space. All right? And that started an incredibly lengthy conversation amongst these top tier schools, a lot of self-reflection about what are we doing, okay? Now that is not necessarily the case today, but I ask you this. I'm a person who believes in numbers. They tell me something. This shows you, right here, and here's Harvard, Yale, Princeton, and Stanford. This shows you the percentage of the admissions class for each year from 2010 to 2012 that are Asian. In only a couple cases they top out over 20%. And then two peer institutions that do not use, they use race-neutral admissions, which is Berkeley, nearly 50% was Asian. MIT, nearly 30% was Asian. Now I don't know what that's telling me, but it does tell me that there is a concern here. And you have to be realistic about that. There is some great debate. If anyone ever wants to spend some time, the New York Times has spent a lot of this bringing in players from all different sides of the equation to ask, why is this so? But as parents, right, as Asian American parents, I want you guys to have this information in front of you. It makes you think. It does not mean your kid will not be able to live it, but it still means that you guys are running into issues. And I'll talk a little bit about this. And the good thing is, look at this. Here's the Berkeley, 50%. This is what Asians represent in California. What percent? This is the most populous Asian state in the United States. We have more here than anywhere else, right? And I am fairly certain the national average is about 6%. But so let's say the positive of this. If 6%, then the Asian American community is doing pretty great. They're 3x over, but they should be represented, right? But the simple fact is we know the pool that's applying to Berkeley and MIT is the same pool that's applying to Harvard, to Princeton, to Yale, and to Stanford. So why is the performance so different? I don't know, but it's a question that needs to be asked, and you have to take into consideration as a parent and as someone who's applying to schools. All right. So, last slide that's going to make it sound miserable. Then I'm going to make it sound good. Okay? It's hard to get into UCs even. These are the average matriculation numbers for the last year. Now, the two top schools, UCLA, UC Berkeley, we can kind of expect that. But a lot of kids for a long time felt like Davis was a fallback school, didn't they? That's my safety school. Oh, Lord. It's not easy to get into Davis. It's a great school, but it's not easy to get in there. You need to understand that there is so much competition, and the UCs face certain hurdles, right? They have difficulties. To give you an idea of this, the UC is statutorily required. That means the law says that the UC has to apply or save a space for 9% of the California population. It used to be 15, right? It's changed now because the population has grown so much. And the former dean of chancellor of the UC system, Mark Udall, came out one day about, I think 3 years ago and said, this is the problem. Berkeley and UCLA feel that they are equal to any of the top schools in this world. And they probably are. The brand is there, they have great education. But the UC system as a whole, because it has to account for this ever-growing population of Californians, has to grow essentially an additional 5,000 seats every year. He said, basically, he said, we have to grow a Yale every year at UC to account for the growth. So that's the problem. That denominator is getting bigger. And it's hard to account for. Okay? All right. Is everyone sufficiently scared? I know I am when I do these numbers. My daughter comes and goes, Daddy, I want to go to school. And I go, oh. Okay? It's not quite that. All UC, on average, lets in about 68% of the applicants to the entire system. This is not all at Berkeley and UCLA, it's across the system. And the bottom line is that UC education is a spectacular education, right? And this is what they have. They have this great, if you guys ever want to do this, go on to Google and Google UC calculator. There's this great functional tool in the UC system that you can go in and put your child's SAT score, and then you can put in their GPA, and it will tell you whether or not they fall within the 9% range. And if they're in the 9% range, they have a seat at the UC. That is the law. All right? So you'll know whether or not your kid goes. That doesn't mean they have a seat at Berkeley. It might be a seat at UC Santa Cruz, but they have a seat. Okay? And this is a great little thing. And I just took this number. These are sort of the low-end ranges, right? So even a kid who's only got a 3.0, let's just say we're not really pleased with that as a parent, but if that kid happens to be one of those kids who goes really low in SAT score, he or she gets into the UC. All right? And this whole range gives you the idea of what it is. Now, schools are still selective, but it gives you, as a parent, a safety place to put your child. Look, UC system is a great system, right? You pay a quarter of what you pay to send your kid to Stanford. Actually, less than that. You probably pay about a fifth. And the bottom line is, I used to be an investment banker. I used to interview folks who would come to us, and we look at Berkeley just as much as we look at Stanford. They were the same thing to us, right? You got a grade from there, you're a great person. You're probably really bright with that education, right? And if I can save $160,000 in 4 years getting that degree, amen. Okay? UCs are fantastic about this. And there's some advantages here, right? UCLA still allows people in the smaller spaces, I mean the lower ends, to get in. We've had more students going to Berkeley out of California, specifically, and the Bay Area is the biggest group. So you guys represent an area that Berkeley accepts the most. It's good, right? That's a nice thing. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about ways to get around this ongoing problem. How many of you guys know what early decision or early action is? You know what these programs are? Okay, I'm going to explain them, because I like to assume that anytime someone tells me about something and I don't know what it is and they don't explain it, it drives me crazy. Early decision or early action are programs done by most private universities. The UC is the only system that probably really affects us here that does not do them. And they are essentially an application process of deal. They say to your students, if you fulfill all the admissions requirements and apply by November, we will tell you before the new year whether or not you got in. It's a nice deal. So you know early on whether or not you're in there. And this is something where you have strong students who have got their act together, can put together the entire process of the admissions application, all the admissions applications, and submit this stuff. But there are different versions of it. What they have are essentially early decision and then early action. And I'll talk about it. Early decision is essentially a contract. When you apply early decision to a university, you say to them, if you accept me, I will come. Doesn't matter where else I get into, I will come. So if you're going to do early decision, you want to be picking a university that you as a student, or a parent of you as a student agree, is the place for me, right? Your kid goes down and does a tour of Stanford and goes, Mom, Dad, I've got to be a Cardinal. It's the greatest place ever. Okay, I've got to go there. And they apply, and you, as Stanford says, we'll take you, you go. And if you apply, you do early decision, you cannot apply anywhere else for early decision. And if you have applications out for other schools in the regular decision process, you've got to pull those back as well. It's essentially a contract. Now, you can get out of it. You have to prove financial hardship. If the package they offer you is not enough. But it's hard to do, and if you renege on this, other schools find out, you will not get admitted anywhere. So you need to be serious about this commitment, okay? And it's good, because it lets schools know, I'm a top candidate, I'm interested in you, and they want to think, well, we're ready to invest in you. But it's also bad, because once they know that you're fully invested in them, whatever they offer you as a financial package is what you're going to get. And the nice thing about having multiple offers is you can go back and say, you know, Yale, it's great, but Princeton's getting, right? You want to have that leverage, okay? But it's not a bad way to do it. Early action, same thing, you're committing to a school, but you do not have to contractually go to that school, okay? And this last one is single choice early action, and this one is used by Stanford and Harvard. Harvard's now gone back into the game. They were out of early decision early action for a few years, where they say, you can only apply to us, but you're not forced to come to our school if we accept you, all right? Now, what people hear about this, and this is a good point, is that these tend to provide some really advantageous admissions numbers, and that is true. So let me make sure you guys understand this chart. What we have here at the bottom are the admissions rates, percentage-wise, per school. So for this last year, Harvard let in 5.7%. But for those of them who did early admissions, Harvard let almost 16%. That's 3 times as much. That's great, right? Same with all these. In general, you go across the board. I use what are called, I don't know if you guys are familiar with this, but the HIPSM. This is a very popular term now. Harvard, Princeton, Yale, Stanford, MIT. They're kind of the benchmark schools. Okay? And in this case, all of these schools, you generally raise your chances dramatically. Okay? In some cases, more than 3x. MIT is the odd one. MIT, historically, you go back as far as they've offered this program, they have never bumped that tremendously. It's usually been about 1 or 2% differential. Okay? This is important because it raises your chances. But let me make some points to you. Schools use early decision, early action as a strategic tool. Schools don't want to spend a ton of money and time filling their class, but they want to get the best students possible. They want to get the top tier students that fill all their needs. And so they reach out to students that they know are really highly likely to come to their school and will fulfill those needs. And it's not just the academic ones. If I'm Stanford and I need a new quarterback, and Andrew Luck is coming up the way, and Andrew Luck is a 4.2 student in high school, and I know he plays quarterback pretty well, and I have the coach saying, we want him in, you go out and encourage Andrew Luck to apply early decision, and he's got a slot. So they use early decision to fill a lot of spaces, and what happens with that is this. You start getting a ton of the class filled with early decisions. So, for example, this year, Princeton, before the rest of the people who had applied to Princeton regular even got looked at, more than half the seats that were possible were gone. Is that clear? Imagine you come someplace and you want to sit down here and you know this place is going to be packed. And they let a first part of you guys come in, and you grab those seats, and that's, you take half of them up, and the rest of them are available for all the people who had to wait, and they got to fight over what's left. That's what happens here. So if your kid is serious about a school that he or she wants to go to, they know where they want to go, applying early admissions is not just an advantage from the standpoint of statistics, because this is a little misleading, but it is an advantage. The simple fact is that there are only so many spaces in each one of these schools, and if half of them get taken before you even get taken into the consideration, you're putting yourself at a disadvantage. All right? So, yeah, question? I'm happy to take it now.
This is great information, but I'm thinking about it in perspective. Number one, how do we know it's eligible? And how do we know the chances for being considered? Third, how do we estimate the financial package that they need? Because there's a catch if you.
Yeah.
So how that related to
So the first answer is you don't know. There's still, admissions is kind of alchemy, right? Are we doing okay? Is it mic? Is it mic? Is that better? Can everyone hear me better now? I'm sorry. So his question was, using this data, how can you make an estimation as to whether your child is competitive? I'm assuming, like, can they get in, fulfill the requirements?